So, a little movie called Red One, starring Dwayne The Rock Johnson, came out last week, and it was a Christmas movie that was also produced by Dwayne Johnson that cost a whopping $250 million. And guess what? It only grossed about $32 million in its opening weekend, which I will point this out. A lot of articles are not doing this. It made the same amount of money as Elf did back in 2003. Elf had an opening weekend of $32.1 million. And Elf came out, and those numbers are from November 9th, 2003. So Elf came out sooner than Red One did and made roughly the same amount of money. But here's the difference between Elf and Red One. Elf had a production budget of $33 million. Red One had a production budget of $250 million plus. That's the difference between the two movies. Hell, even if we look at the Polar Express, granted, Red One did make more money than the Polar Express did in its opening weekend. The Polar Express made $23.3 million opening weekend back in November of 2004. And the Polar Express did had a reported production budget of $165 million at the time. The production budget, you can point to the animation done at the time, and that's why the production budget was so high. So how did a live action Christmas movie cost more money than an animated one from 20 years ago? And this article from Variety, I'm not going to read it verbatim because I don't need to read it verbatim. Because they do go, the headline reads, backing Dwayne Johnson's $250 million Christmas movie Red One made sense during the streaming wars. Now, not so much. Is Red One, Dwayne Johnson's Yuletide action extravaganza with a gargantuan $250 million budget, a sign of where the movie business is headed, or a relic from its free spending streaming wars past? After the movie opened last weekend in the U.S. to a less than festive $32 million, revised downward from an estimated $34 million on Sunday, folks close to Amazon, the e-retailer turned aspiring media giant, insisted that the movie was successful. It didn't matter that it would take a Christmas miracle for Red One to ever get out of the red during its theatrical run, and who cares that Joker Folie à Deux was declared a Folie à dud, their words, not mine, when the Warner Brothers sequel opened to $38 million a few weeks prior, despite costing $50 million less than Red One. The idea was that all of the attention surrounding the movie's big screen release would ensure that a vast audience tunes in when Red One debuts at some point on the company's streaming service Prime Video, in turn bolstering subscribers or keeping them from shedding the service for another. You know what other movie I heard this for a couple years ago? Was a movie called Spirited. It's okay if you don't remember what that is. Spirited was a Christmas movie that starred Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds, and it did have a small theatrical run. And I heard the same excuse with Spirited was that the big screen release would act as its own marketing for when Spirited released on Apple TV Plus. And the movie came out in theaters. It did have good review. It had great reviews at the time. It came out on Apple TV Plus, and 2 years later, I don't hear anyone talking about the movie Spirited, despite it being a Christmas movie with Will Ferrell, who his prior Christmas movie Elf is dubbed as a Christmas classic. And Ryan Reynolds was also in it. Yet you never hear about the movie Spirited, and in fact, I still am of the opinion that Spirited got snubbed at the Oscars for Best Original Song for the I think it was called Unredeemable. Let me stop recording. I'll jump back in here real quick in just like half a second. Okay, I did verify the song was called Unredeemable. But still, I feel that the movie Spirited did get snubbed at the Oscars of Best Original Song for the song Unredeemable. But still, let's keep going with that. Let's keep going with that. So Amazon Prime insists that the movie is successful. and that the movie's big screen release is going to act as its own marketing for when it hits streaming. Oh, and then there's all the ancillary revenues that The Rock will bring, from third-party licensing deals to movie rentals to merchandising. Who wants a Red One beer stein? It's all part of new kind of movie math, one that de-emphasizes box office returns, which are reported and therefore publicly verifiable, in favor of future downstream revenues, which are rarely reviewed and only made public in a scarce and aggressively spun manner. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to stop him right here. What is the difference between today's movie environment in 2024 going into 2025 and the movie environment of 2003 and 2004 when Elf and the Polar Express came out? There was such a thing as DVD sales. There was such a thing as cable channels, places that a lot of these movies would get played on. Dwayne Johnson's Red One is just going to be stuck on Amazon Prime Video, and that's it. It's the same thing that happened with Spirited with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. It's stuck on Apple TV Plus, and that is it. Movies that are made for streaming services are basically after that. That is where movies go to die, is on streaming services. Do you think that Elf would have been a modern Christmas classic had it not been played on television every fucking year since it came out? I remember TBS showing this movie every single fucking year. Same with Cartoon Network, same with TNT. It didn't really matter. A lot of basic cable channels played the movie Elf with Will Ferrell. They also did the same thing with the Polar Express. Sure, the DVDs would come out a year after the fact because it's a Christmas movie. Who's going to buy a Christmas movie in February or March? You know, I made this point too when I did my interview with Bob Trait, who was the marketing director of the Colonial Theater at the time of the interview. And I remember making the point of, you know, I remember a time back in the early 2000s when if you wanted to go see a movie, you went to the theater to go see the movie, especially if it was a Christmas movie like Elf or the Polar Express, because if you missed the Polar Express in theaters back in 2004, guess what? You were waiting till at least mid-November 2005 for the DVD to come out. Yes, Christmas movies back then took over a year to release on physical media. It's not like today where, you know, Red One is going to release in theaters, but it's probably going to come to streaming relatively quickly because it's a Christmas movie. You know, people today, because of streaming services, actually forget the wait times between the film's theatrical release and the film's release onto DVD at the time, and then subsequent. And actually, no, not really Blu-ray, because when Blu-ray came out, the release window was shrinking. But still, this is how Christmas movies became bona fide classics. It wasn't the initial theatrical release. The perfect example of that is the movie It's a Wonderful Life. When It's a Wonderful Life came out, it bombed at the time. It didn't become a hit movie until It's a Wonderful Life fell into the public domain, and a lot of local television stations that didn't really want to pay a lot of money for licensing all of a sudden realize that here's this public domain Christmas movie that they can play on 24-hour marathons, and that's how It's a Wonderful Life became a Christmas classic. It wasn't until It's a Wonderful Life fell back under copyright protections that it fell out of the public consciousness, and now I don't know if they're still doing this now, but I do remember TBS doing 24-hour marathons of A Christmas Story, and A Christmas Story was actually very similar to It's a Wonderful Life in that it didn't make a lot of money when it originally came out. I am actually going to look up the exact box office figures just to verify, but I do remember hearing that it didn't do well box office wise at the time. Budget of $3.3 million, but only opened to $2 million at the time. But still, if we're looking back, no one is disputing that A Christmas Story is a quote-unquote Christmas classic, but would it be a Christmas classic if it only released in theaters once and then just released a VHS and then had no other ancillary releases, if it never played on television every single fucking year? It goes back to my original point with Elf. Would Elf with Will Ferrell be a Christmas classic had it not played on basic cable year after year after year after year? Or would it have just relegated to the background of, oh yeah, that was a Will Ferrell Christmas movie that came out like 20 years ago, but no one really remembers it. That's what they don't talk about in this article once. They always talk about these, they talk about streaming and how, there was a time when like a $250 million movie would be seen as a loss leader to gain subscribers, but they're missing the big picture as to, not only, I'm actually not considering Red One an outright flop right now, but it is going to be a bomb down the road because they are forgetting what makes a Christmas classic a Christmas classic. It is not the release to theaters and then release to streaming once, like what happened with Spirited. It plays on basic cable every fucking year. ABC Families, 25 Days of Christmas. They're gonna show Elf. They're gonna show The Polar Express. They're going to show what was that one with Vince Vaughn? I think it was it Fred Claus, the Vince Vaughn Christmas movie that came out in 2009. Still, this is what makes Christmas classics, is that they play on television every fucking year. It's not going to happen with Red One. It didn't happen with Spirited. It just got thrown up onto a streaming service to fucking die. Red One will fucking die the second it hits Amazon Prime Video, because who's going to go back and watch a streaming movie made from a couple years ago? If you even remember that the movie existed. And perfect example, how many quote-unquote Netflix original movies do you even remember existed? Do you even remember the movie Triple Frontier with Charlie Hunnam and Ben Affleck? Probably not. It came out in 2020. Do you remember the movie War Machine starring Brad Pitt? Probably not, because it was a Netflix original that came out in 2017. God, I'm trying to remember. So, remember Six Underground with Ryan Reynolds, directed by Michael Bay? Was a Netflix original action movie, cost $150 million to produce, back in 2019. Yet no one talks about Six Underground anymore. No one talks about Triple Frontier anymore. No one talks about War Machine, because streaming is where these movies go to die. And I know that I keep repeating myself like a broken record, but I want to hammer this point home, that I'm not considering Dwayne Johnson's Red One a bomb now. Yes, it didn't make as much money in theaters, and I think that's mostly due to its budget, because again, Red One made the same amount of money that Elf made during its opening weekend back in November of 2003. What's killing Red One is its production budget, but the real death blow that is going to come to Red One down the line is that it's a streaming exclusive movie that is not going to get played on television every year, like Elf got played every year, like The Polar Express got played every year, like Fred Claus got played every year. And that is what makes Christmas classics Christmas classics. It's not just one release in theaters, then release to DVD, and then move on with your life. No, you have to be hammered over the fucking head with the Christmas movie for it to be a Christmas classic. And how do we know that Amazon Prime Video next year, 2025, is not going to make another Christmas movie, probably smaller budgeted, and forget all about Red One starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? Right? They want to make the next Christmas classic, but instead they went to a fucking streaming service instead of going down the more traditional path where, okay, maybe they would have to take slightly less money because Amazon did outbid everyone else to get Red One, but the promise will be, okay, you're going to have a smaller budget, but you're going to have not only a full theatrical release, you're going to get played on our sister cable channels every year for the next 5 years, and basically we're going to cement it in people's heads that Red One is the go-to Christmas movie that everyone has to go back to at least once a year. Amazon Prime Video, it ain't gonna butt fucking happen.